All right, episode number 46.
Yo.
Let's get into it, man. We're going to be talking about how to find clients where you're able to get bigger budgets and how that goes hand in hand with increasing value.
Yes, sir. Let's roll intro music.
All right, right now I'm looking at Ed on this podcast. We're doing this over Zoom, and he's wearing a Bogey Boys?
Bogey Boys for life.
Yeah, Bogey Boys. Shout out to Macklemore for coming out with a golf line.
I think it's so funny because I wear this hat and it's like, damn, I wish I could even get bogeys on the golf course.
If you guys have been listening to the last couple episodes, I've been hyping Ed up on his golf game. But hey, Ed, I just want to first shout you out at the beginning of this episode. I be seeing you, you're a multidisciplinary creative now. You be painting.
Dude, okay. Hey. I was just paying to get the sample on the wall, all right, bro? I ain't getting into the creative paint work just yet. But we did just get our house. We did just get our house painted, and I'm hyped, dude. That's about to be a sick YouTube video. We're doing like house tour, baby, MTV Crib style.
Hey, Architectural Digest.
Nah, it's not gonna look that fire. But we'll try.
So we've both been busy, kind of just tackling projects. You know, the end of the year gets busy because everyone wants that holiday content for Christmas, Black Friday, and then obviously the continuation to the new year. Off the mic, We were talking about how, you know, when you look at all the client projects that you've taken on and I've taken on over the last even year, there's some that are big budget, there's some that are kind of middle tier, and then there's some that are smaller budget. And I know that there's a lot of people in our audience that are probably wondering, how do you go from, you know, working with the small to mid-sized companies that might not really have a big budget to all of a sudden, you know, working on projects where we're talking about like $20,000, $30,000 projects, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to dive deeper into it. I know that you and me both have things to say about this, but what's top of mind when you think of, you know, what's the difference between a client project that you're a part of where it's maybe a couple thousand versus something that, you know, we're looking at like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 when it comes to their budget?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm super excited to talk about this topic today just because I know what it was like to first start out. And I remember just like, you know, we all been there getting those gigs that are like $1,000 here, $2,000 here. You get that first like $3,000 paycheck and you're like, yo, I just made $3,000 doing content creation. But actually, it's funny because it was around the time when I met Paul, which was only like a year ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was around that time where I've been able to land a couple 5-figure deals at that point. When I met Paul, it was like a regular thing for this guy. I was like, how are you able to just like get these fire gigs, bro, where you're making like 10, 15, 20, $30,000 budgets, like just like a walk in the park. And so I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because I felt like it was a major mindset shift for me. And that's really where it happens first, is like in your mind before you're able to actually get out there and do and execute on like a $25,000 project, let's say, which honestly, guys, it's the mindset of a $25,000 project, in my opinion, is still low budget, like in the production world. And obviously when you're in the freelancer world, a brand pays you $25,000 for a shoot that happens in one day, you're like, yo, that's crazy. But actually in the production world, you're still talking like crumbs, to be honest. Like production world, they're talking multiple 6-figure deals, sometimes even $1 million deals to execute on a 45-second spot, right? So we're talking about on the freelancer side more so today, and how you're able to maybe go from a one-man band to a small crew to land a multiple 5-figure deal. So yeah, I just want to say I'm super excited to talk about this topic today. For me personally, one of the biggest things that differentiate between a 5 and like, let's say a $25,000 project is the size of crew, obviously. Once I realized I could not make a $25,000 deal happen with just myself, that was a learning curve, to say the least, right? Like you're so used to, you know, running and gunning, you know, planning your shoots like 2 days before, showing up with your camera and being like, all right, let's rock this, right? You cannot do that on a project that is like multiple 5 figures. You could, but you'll be hecka stressed out. And I've been there before.
Yeah.
So I would say crew. And for me, the sweet spot crew size is about 5 people.
Mhm.
Like ideally we have 7, but like 5 is what I've noticed where I feel creative still. I still feel like I have enough control. And I feel like everyone is kind of executing at their best without having like too much downtime. I think like 5 people is solid. What about you?
Yeah, I think what the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like a $5 to $25,000 project is, it's the recipe of scope, deliverables, and then production value. If a brand comes to me and says,
Mhm.
"Hey, this is our budget. What does that mean?" Depending on where that's at, might mean that I get more support on my end, which could increase the overall output. So I love it when I'm able to come across a brand or a client, I should say, that's like, "Hey, this is our all-in budget. This is what we're used to spending. What can we do with this?" Versus me shooting in the dark, because ultimately, I want to figure out how I can add the most value that I possibly can, and if that means adding more talent, adding more crew members, just so then we can get even more dialed in on what the output's going to be, then it's a win-win. I also just want to be clear with people that I've been a part of massive, massive budget projects where my take home, obviously increases compared to a $5,000 budget. But if you're ever a part of a $50,000 budget, that's gross, right? You got to think about, okay, how do I make sure that I'm able to make a profit on this? And that's probably one of my favorite challenges is trying to price things out where there's almost a safety net. And then my take home is going to be a pretty healthy amount, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I mean something that I learned is obviously on paper, like you Paul just said, you could be making $50,000 on paper, like on the project, but that doesn't necessarily mean your take home is gonna be anything more than what you're used to. Like I've been on
Hmm.
projects where, like, let's say I did a run and gun type project. I'm still only taking home like 3K, but the budget's like 20.
Yep.
Just because we've got a lot of crew. And the thing is, it's like at that point, this is where the grass is always greener on the other side. Sometimes when you're a freelancer, you're so eager to get that first $10,000 project. But the thing is, once you get to higher budgets, you have more people, you have more expenses, you honestly have way more project planning. And it's like, would you rather just make 5K on a quick little 1 day shoot? Or would you try to make 7 or 8K and have like like $30,000 budget? You know what I mean? Because $30,000 budget will come with a lot more stress. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point because you don't want to run. I've been on projects before. I just went through one actually, and Paul knows about this, but the budgets can be bigger sometimes, but it's a lot more work,
Hmm.
a lot more work. And then you run into those clients where, at the end of the day, we're not going to downplay it. I mean, for me, if I was a small business, $20,000 is a lot of money. We're not talking about a little amount of money here. Like, of course, we're throwing these numbers around like they're nothing. But to be honest, when you're a business owner and a content creator is like, yeah, you want to do your next campaign, it's going to be 20 G's. You're like, holy crap. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So once they feel like they need to have skin in the game, the basically the pressure just rises now. And so they're going to want more, they're going to expect more, and if you don't manage that kind of stress well and you don't manage those expectations well, it can be way more stressful than just doing like a couple quick 5 grand gigs. So it's like you got to figure out where you're at with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. One general rule for anyone that's listening that's trying to figure out, okay, how the heck do you even go from 5 to 25? Um, One thing that really helped put it in perspective for me as I started working with more of the mid to, bigger size brands was most companies that value content are putting 15 to 20% of their gross revenue back into marketing, back into content. Now, yeah, content's just one little piece of the pie, but that's helpful. And it's part of the reason why when a lead comes through, I'll do my research and figure out what their annual gross revenue is. Cause I'm like, it'd be nice to know what their quarterly, content campaign budget is.
Hmm.
But ultimately, budgets don't matter unless you're making a profit on it. And I've just really enjoyed getting to know you, Ed, and Corey Jenkins and Christian, who was also on this on the podcast earlier this year, where Christian was talking about how he's a part of these big projects sometimes, where instead of taking more of a chunk for himself, he's super adamant and interested in building out his team, where that work is maybe going to help him land future work. And also the client's going to maybe be more repeat business because of just how satisfied they were with the overall project. So that's one thing that I often think about when I think of big budget is team. So you gotta have a team that's reliable and also is going to help be an extension of your own brand. And that is a game changer. And that's a question that I feel like I get sometimes off the mic is people asking, hey, how do you work with Ed on shoots? Or, hey, how are you able to, hop on that fitness shoot with Corey Jenkins? Logistically, how does that work out? And I think once you can nail down that, then you're really going to start seeing these clients that are willing to pay you more money because they see more value.
Yeah, dude, that's huge. That is huge. I honestly feel like Paul has brought me on for a couple projects, and like it's just seeing Paul work in his element with a team is very creatively inspiring. And that's one big thing that I would love to relay too is that it's not that you can't do the whole process, right? Like going from a $5,000 to $25,000 budget doesn't necessarily mean it's because you're working more or because you're doing a lot more deliverables. Like for example, Paul does photo and he does video. I do photo, I do video. But do I want to do both on a shoot? Not necessarily. Like it's not ideal for me. Although even though I feel like I could crush both, it's just nice being able to have someone else do the other half. And it's nice being able to have someone who does lighting. It's these are the things that up the budget, not because you're just taking home more money. Like if you're only monetarily driven, is you're going to be one, burnt out, and two, you're going to get a subpar finished product because you're just not going to get the results that you want. Whereas, like Paul said, once you have that network, once you have your go-to guy for photos, like once you have your go-to guy for gaffing or grip, your go-to guy for or girl or guy for styling, it's going to be great for you because now you know exactly how to pull off a $20,000 shoot, walk in the park where you're not stressed out. And then, maybe we could talk about this for a little second, but I know we've both been on this end, but having like an editor is an absolute game changer.
Yep.
Like an editor imagine like doing your shoot, handing everything over to an editor and they handle it after so you can work on the next project. It's like bigger budgets, in my opinion, for me, when I see bigger budgets, it seems like more convenience. You know what I mean? Not necessarily more money, because sometimes it's really not. But it's just more convenience, more comfortable. You don't have to stress about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be stuck on this one project for the next 2 months. It's nothing like that. You get a team to help you out with it.
Ed, you brought up a good point. Editors are huge. How does someone go from a camera operator, freelancer, to someone who kind of acts as a producer and also creates content? Because let's be honest, like I find myself just coaching sometimes with other freelancers where I'm saying things where I'm like, I got to remember that not everyone is going to be obsessed with the process like I am. And I feel like the reason why when I sit down with a bunch of people that live in LA who essentially are camera operators or just show up for their day rates and then they're done and they don't even really have to know much about the pre-production, I would say I can't relate with that structure of their business because for me, there's a lot more involvement than just showing up on set, which I feel like increases the overall take home. And that's something that I want to be clear of because I think so often I speak to this like broad audience of freelance photographers, just thinking that they do it all as well. Where, I've started building out my team, you've started building out your team, where in order for me to not hit a ceiling with these big budget projects, I only take on 2 of these big projects at a time, maybe 1, depending on how much logistics are involved. And then I'm able to outsource some of that work to Morgan on my team, who's able to help handle talent casting, location, all those things. And she just becomes a team member on that budget. So I just want to call that out because, again, it took me so long. It took me working at an agency to realize, oh, there's like all these different hats that you can wear. And depending on how much involvement you want, you can potentially get paid more.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And I think that you hit on a really important point that we definitely don't want to just glaze over when it comes to this bigger budget topic, because you're totally right. I think when you increase the budgets for projects, there's a measure of producing slash directing that you need to be really comfortable with. Um, because you're right, in LA, in other areas, like if you're strictly a content creator, you want to show up on a set, you want to do your thing, and you want to get paid, and you want to bounce. Like if that's your end goal, then it's going to be really hard for you to go from 5 to 25,000, to be honest. Like you can get your point to having a really good day rate, right? Of like $5 to $10,000 per day, but you're not going to be able to get those bigger budgets because you're not handling all the hard parts of the process. The reason why the budgets are bigger is because there's just more on the line. And I think when you get more comfortable with producing and directing, and I think those are just bigger words, like they're buzzwords, to be honest, like the kind of formal words that people use in the production industry. But a lot of people who are listening to this right now, whether they're a photographer or videographer, you are producing all your own shoots. You are directing all your own shoots. You're handling the pre-pro. You're handling post. You are wearing all the hats in the creative process. Now, figure out which parts are overwhelming for you or which parts you need more help with, and then inject like a person into that role. So like
Wow.
producing, directing, those are big words, but at the same time, like if you're good at that, like you're actually really good at putting together. Bro, let me tell you, when Paul sent me, he's worked with one of our friends, Ashley, that he introduced me to Ashley. But like when Paul has shown me some of the stuff that he's worked on with the Excel sheets, let me tell you that these Excel sheets are freaking extensive, bro. When I first opened, when Paul had me on, it was so awesome because he had me on as a DP for one of his shoots. And I was like, oh yeah, send me the pre-pro, send me the planning. And like, dude, I was mind blown. When I first saw these Excel sheets and what he goes through to plan these bigger budget shoots, I felt like my process was Stone Age. I was like, bro, what am I doing? Like my processes feel like they're about to break tomorrow if I don't do anything about it. But that's just what I'm saying is that when you're good at understanding planning and location scouting and all those things, I think that is what differentiates the small to big budgets, because for clients, it really matters about the experience.
It
And when
does.
you have a properly planned shoot, you increase their experience, thus increasing budget, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So like the pre-pro part is huge. And if you're good at that, I feel like you should double down on it.
Yeah. Two things come to mind from that. If you're in a position where you want to learn more about how to just get better at maybe the producer role, logistics, spreadsheets, all the things, the planning, kind of being the glue that makes everything stick together for the shoot. Find producers in your area and just literally ask them if you can just show up and help. Buy them a coffee too on the way, because at the end of the day, that's how I became extremely comfortable with talking logistics and taking on those additional roles. And they became streamlined because of templates and these, streamlined process that I'm able to create and develop.
Yeah.
And Mila wants to say something real quick.
Mila. Come here, Mila.
Can you say hello?
Yo, you guys might not know this. Oh, actually, are we allowed to announce your big news coming up next month?
Oh, yeah. You can do it.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Okay. I was just going to say, I wasn't sure if it was one of those things where like you want to be low key about it and then pop it
it's
up
out.
on the gram or something. Oh, okay.
It's
That's
out.
right. I forgot if you already made a post about it, but Paul's having
we're
another
having a baby girl.
Dude.
Yeah, we're doing
crazy.
We're doing the girl squad thing, and we're super excited. We don't have a name locked in yet, but maybe next time we talk on the mic, we'll have a name.
Oh man, dude, Paul's full dad mode right now, dude. Paul's full dad mode. I respect it.
There's one big pillar in regards to this conversation I want to touch on, and it's you gotta be business minded, and also you gotta take notes on and build your confidence and get your reps in on things like upselling, because I love it when I get on a discovery call with a client and I can listen. And then I can do the most common upsell strategy like McDonald's. Would you like fries with that? Right? So often freelance creatives forget to offer more value. It just doesn't end with what your client says. It's you trying to figure out, okay, what are some other things that are going to help complement that and elevate this experience for them? And for me, it's like if someone comes in the door with photo, I'm pitching them on video. If someone comes in the door on video, I pitch them on photo. And then I'm now at a point where me and you both are there, where if someone wants photo and video and it requires more, strategy support, then maybe we add a fee for creative consulting, and so forth. So that's one thing I just need to point out is, as creatives, it's hard sometimes to get in that mindset, but you have to figure out how you can add the most value possible in order to get your clients to keep coming back, but also to increase their budgets.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like I've said that's huge, like 50,000 times. That's huge. That's huge. I need to change up my.
Bro, we need to make some t-shirts. Man. Let's talk about the t-shirts real quick. Quick little rant. It's huge. Shift. Shift. Yeah, bro, we got some funny ones.
We gotta make some t-shirts. That's coming. We got some exciting things in the pipeline. I wanna hit on something that I feel like is really, really helpful from a practical sense when you want to up your budgets. Kind of piggybacking on what you just said, is providing value, right? So going one step further, it's like, how can you show that value? And this is something that is, I know Paul's super huge on, but you need to value stack. Like, you need to show them what there is on the sheet. So think about it like this. The best way I can think about it, me and Christina right now, we're in the process of buying a car, right?
Hey.
When you go buy a new car, when you go buy, you go to a new dealership to buy a car, you basically see the window sticker, right? When you see the window sticker, the first thing you look at is the end price, and you're like, shift, like that's a lot of money, like that's a lot of money. You're like, the first thing you see, you're like, holy crap, that's a big number. But then you look at the extra add-ons, you see the spec sheet, you see like the line items to get to that number, and the number makes more sense in your head, right? The biggest thing for creators is that they usually spit out that big number, but don't have a spec sheet to follow up with it.
That's the truth.
So like, you can't just tell a brand, yeah, we want to shoot in this location with these models. It's going to be 20 racks. They're going to be like, okay, like how? They're going to be shocked, sticker shock. Yep. You know what I mean? So how do you get to that number? So before they even have that chance, you break it down. You say videographer is this much, photographer is this much, stylist is this much, grip and gaff is this much, location, travel, etc. All this stuff. You put all of it in an itemized line sheet, and then there's the end number. Trust me, when I did this, actually Paul's the one who showed me this, but when I started doing this, $20,000 to $30,000 budgets now seemed way more tangible, because I was like, oh, you're actually right. My take home from this is still only like 5 or 6, which is the same of what I was making before. But now that I have a team, now that I'm adding logistics, it makes it so much more comfortable to budget out what it looks like to execute on this shoot.
Wow.
So don't forget the spec sheet, boys and girls. The value stacking is huge.
Best way to build trust is be transparent about pricing, break it down, and that will alleviate pricing tension. I mean, it's like when you buy a car, when you open up the pamphlet and you see all the things that are included for that price, you kind of nudge Christine and you go, babe, this is the car though. You see?
Yeah.
You see the features? And you just got to remember to put yourself in the shoes of a decision maker that's making a huge purchasing decision. To reduce pricing tension, you also got to make sure that your process and just the overall experience is like dialed. And one way that we do that sometimes, Ed, is through like a really nice designed proposal that's packaged as a PDF. So then they can share it with other people that are key players on their team. Because it's typically multiple people making decisions on a budget when it's that big. Whereas smaller budget, you might be talking to one person, if not two, if there's 2 co-founders.
And going along with the experience and the brand for the actual creative, I just want to give like a very quick recap case study type deal with my last shoot. You guys might have seen on my Instagram, I went to Joshua Tree to execute on a shoot. But the thing is, like,
that shoot was fire.
The budget, yeah, it was sick. The budget was tight, super tight. I would not have liked it to have been where it was. But the thing is, I was vested into the project out of just the monetary value. And that's something I really want to hit on, is like, a lot of the creatives, when I was first starting out, I would take any money that was just ready and at my door. it could be it could be a bad project, it could be something not creatively fulfilling, and I'll just take it because it pays. But I think once you get to a certain level of like 10 to 15 to 20, even like $40,000 budgets, if we're talking in that range, you should start doing things that one, you feel very excited to be a part of. I would say like when I was doing like the $2,000 to $3,000 to $5,000 budget projects, whether I was on board or not creatively, it doesn't really matter because there's not that much logistics involved. I could show up for one day, be like, all right, we'll just get this over with, shoot it, get paid, and we're good.
Mhm.
But the thing is, when you get to like bigger budgets, it's not like that. It's a lot more extensive. So if you're not really creatively involved or you don't feel inspired by it, it's going to be dreadful. You're going to be
Yeah.
making more money, but it's going to be dreadful. So
Yeah.
like even if you can get to a point where you could, pitch the client on shooting at this location and cut cost elsewhere, or you could shoot with this model and cut cost elsewhere. Do those things so that you can make the project fulfilling for you, because your best work will come out of it versus trying to do something, don't always meet the needs of the client. Sometimes one practical tip I love to share is know when to pull the plug. Like if the client just doesn't have the budget and you have this crazy grand idea of wanting to do it at this location, at this timeline with these people, and just not working, the budgets aren't aligning, just don't force it. Just pull the plug. Pull the plug.
Yeah.
Wait for another opportunity.
Ariana Grande wrote a song on that. Thank you, next.
But pull the plug. Yo, I wish someone would have told me that.
Yo, Ed,
Yeah.
2 things. Number 1, spec shoot, right? We've touched on this so much in our previous episodes. But if you're in a position where you're like, dude, right now I'm working with startups and mid-sized companies, but I feel like my quality's there to work with, those bigger budgets. I just want to let you guys know that a lot of my bigger budget clients come from seeing my spec work on my website or from Instagram.
Yeah.
And one thing that I am looking forward to doing each year, and I've done this in the past, is taking some time off, investing my own money into a spec shoot. So then I can go ahead and start attracting those bigger budget brands. Because I'll be honest, like my portfolio wasn't always what it is now. So you guys need to invest in order to see that, I guess that change in the type of clients you're coming in contact with. And then also, I got a quick little win. I just worked with a client that their budget was 10 grand. And after working with them, I upsold them on photos. And now we're looking at between 13 and 15,000. Now, the way that I feel like I've been able to do that lately is by voicing to my clients, hey, I'm going to treat your brand as if it's my own. And their trust immediately goes up. They're like, wow, like thank you. That's huge. And I don't only say it, but I act on it. So my client, I realized that on set, they were, frustrated with the fact they didn't invest in photo because their budget didn't accommodate. So one thing that I made sure was I was able to spend time when I wasn't directing, shooting photo, to provide them with those assets afterwards, which they then purchased. So that's just a little maybe golden nugget for those of you that are trying to figure out how to connect more with your clients that come in the door, is put yourself in their shoes and start just being like, hey, this is a collaboration at the end of the day. I want to make sure that I'm able to do as much as I can with your budget. And if your budget doesn't meet maybe what your mood board says, then I'll be honest. Otherwise, let's do it.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. Don't be more accommodating to the clients, because nothing's worse than like drawing that hard line with clients and just being unpleasant to work with. You want to be able to flex where you can and work within their budget so that they can feel like client satisfaction is huge. Like what's the point of making more money if the client's never going to come back to you ever again?
Exactly.
It's like kind of a waste, to be honest.
That's
so
facts.
It's like, how can you get to a point where they don't have an unpleasant experience just so you can put more money in your pocket and work on a cooler project? Like put yourself in the shoes of the business owner. That's just like huge. That's a huge tip from Paul just now. Like I try to think of that all the time, is if I were this business owner spending 20 grand on this project, how would I want to feel? How would I want the content to be? And all those points. One like kind of more last things I would love to touch on before we end the episode, which is I feel like me and Paul are saying all these budgets, and I don't want to scare anyone away. Like, some people might be listening to this right now and being like, yo, I still can't even land a $2,000 project. And they're talking about 15, 20, 25. Trust me when I tell you, we both can relate to that feeling. But the second thing is, you also have to be brutally honest with yourself in like what quality of work you can produce. And I think there is definitely a little bit of a disconnect with sometimes when creatives want to land a $10,000 project and you look at their work and they're like, I'm sorry, but that's not $10,000 worth of quality. And like, I know that's like kind of hard to hear, but it's the truth. And I knew that when I first had my Blackmagic, when I first got that camera, I was like, yo, this is fire quality work. I'm doing some of my best work that I've ever seen. All it took was for me to see one of my friends who are like a DP in LA working with a Red, and I'm like, okay, my stuff still looks bootleg as heck. But like, but you have to go through those hard conversations with yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be honest with yourself. I'm sure Paul had a transition. Maybe you can shed some light on this, but I'm sure you had a transition as well where you were like, yo, I look at my photos. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm better than I was 5 years ago. But dang, I see my homies who are doing this, working on bigger budgets, and like my quality is still, it's still not there yet. And it's like understanding that there's that difference there is what will help you to gauge the budget as you climb it. You know what I mean? Like, you need to understand, like, we are creatives. So the work that you produce needs to be fire. It's not just all about business and like producing and directing and all this stuff if your stuff doesn't look good, Exactly. So it's like how you got to make sure basically my tip is be honest with yourself when you stack your work next to someone who is, let's say, claiming to charge $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for their project.
Yeah, I think that's big. I love kind of breaking down for people, hey, your positioning in your portfolio matters so much before you talk about pitching and pricing. Yeah. And I can't harp on that enough. And it helps too to surround yourself with other with community and like-minded individuals that you either want to get to their level or maybe you're at the same level. Like, I love hopping on just FaceTime calls with Ed on like a weekly basis and just talking about client bids, projects, horror stories, wins, all the things in between, because we can relate on those things. But I also like to, spend time connecting with people that are much older than me, that have more experience in the industry, that are maybe, they've worn all the hats where I'm kind of new to the producer role. So yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. That's good.
Well, I don't want to overwhelm anyone on the podcast, so we could probably wrap it here. I feel like there was a lot of good content. Is there anything else you want to hit on regarding budgets?
I think that's it. I just want to encourage people to start thinking about going into the new year, because at the time that this podcast is being recorded, it's quarter four-ish 2022. Start thinking about if it's time to increase your pricing. And, maybe it's because your clients are currently small to mid-sized brands and they're penny pinchers, and you're trying to break into a new market. Maybe you got new gear, maybe you got more overhead. Now is the best time to do that, especially as new clients are going to come in the door.
So if you were to go from a $5,000 budget to a, let's say, $20,000 to $25,000 budget project, let's just do like a speed round of like one-liner tips. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah.
And I can kind of pick up where you leave off.
Yeah, I think number one is you got to add more value in order to get to a point where you're seeing bigger budgets. If you're not figuring out a way to upsell them on the fries, like McDonald's, right? Shout out to McDonald's. Then there's a good chance they're not going to increase the budget. So that's just like tip number one.
Yeah. Tip number two, I would say, is find your team. In order to increase your budgets, you need to have more people on set. You can't just show up by yourself with your one camera and your one lens and try to land a $20,000 project. It's just not going to happen like that. So find who your go-to photographer is, who your go-to guy for grip and gaff is, or separate those roles, or who your go-to stylist is, or even models, man. Find the models that you work well with and then work with them again and again on other projects. Like, find your team. That's my second tip, because that's a huge tip that I feel like I wish I would have started the process earlier. Frick, I wish Paul lived closer to me. He lives on the other corner of the country, because we'd be working on projects like crazy, but we just live so freaking far from each other. But yeah, the second tip that I have is find your team.
Yeah, the third one is going to be presentation is everything. Man, first impressions are everything, but clients are going to love you if you present pricing in a way that's easy to consume and understand. Proposals. I mean, I got a proposal template. It's the best way to streamline everything. I was talking with Kevin from Vaco on the last episode about this, and it works. I mean, I've been able to see clients go from, budgets of 5 to 20 without changing anything other than the presentation. So invest in the presentation and you're going to find that they take you more serious.
Yeah. I think another tip for me is surround yourself with people who have done those budgets. Like you've probably picked it up, but I've learned a lot from Paul. And so like surround yourself with people like Paul, people like myself, or even other people in the industry that have done bigger budgets. It's so much easier to figure out how to do it when you're talking to people who have done it. When you're just by yourself charging like the one-man band run and gun budget pricing, it's super hard to figure out by yourself in a lonely island how you can increase your budgets without, the resources or the breakdown or the structures. It could be as simple as an email template or an Excel sheet on like how someone has managed to land a bigger budget client. So surround yourself with like-minded individuals or people who have done it, because that's so huge. So hit up Paul. Paul has a lot of experience on stuff like this, and I know in his course he goes into it, but like I wish I would have done that sooner when I was first starting out, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think the last one that comes to mind, then we can wrap it, is reframe pitching as more of a collaboration. And that's only if your portfolio reflects that value of that, level of work and your positioning is locked in. What I mean by that is being comfortable and okay with asking, hey, what's your budget? Or, tell me more about what you spent on your last shoot so then I can make sure that it's a better experience this time around and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I love doing that. And I tell a lot of the people that I coach, you got to position yourself as a content partner versus just someone who pushes buttons on a camera. And that'll ultimately help you level up. Really, it will, because it's a mindset shift. And then like Ed was saying earlier, you almost got to take yourself more serious in order for brands to take you serious. So it goes hand in hand with the way you speak about yourself.
Yeah. I love your last tip of just, how do I say this? I feel like I just lost my train of thought, actually.
Well, it's the positioning thing. It's like instead of selling like a car salesman, it's being like, hey, the collaboration aspect.
I just thought of it. Basically, I love how you said like having those uncomfortable conversations and being comfortable with it. I would love to hit on that in a future episode. I think that would be huge. Maybe one of our next episodes we could do like uncomfortable topics, or like just having back and forth, like maybe even role play of like having those super awkward, uncomfortable conversations that I feel like a lot of people, especially creatives, like shut down when they have those encounters with their clients. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to say that.
I think we should get one of your or my happy clients from the past on the mic to speak from the brand's perspective and just what they look for in like a content creator, and then also their experience in, like you said, that building that comfortability. I think that's huge.
Yeah, love that.
Yo, this episode was awesome.
Yeah, let's wrap here. Hopefully people found value in this podcast episode, because I feel like we dropped some good tips if you're trying to up your budget. Yeah. So also t-shirts. Maybe we can do t-shirts soon. I really want to make
t-shirts.
one.
We also got to get a t-shirt that says no swearing, because me and Ed, that's kind of how we preface with all of our guests is,
PG rated.
It's pretty laid back. Let's just not swear. Otherwise, we got to throw a quack noise.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
Shoot us a follow on Mid Convo, stream it, give us 5 stars. We'll talk soon.
All right. Peace.
Peace.